I'm starting my walk in Pisa. It's the end of November, so the city is preparing to Christmas, mounting Christmas decorations, markets, and even ice skating places. Monument of Victor Emmanuel II. He was a king of Sardinia from 1849 till 1861, when he became the first king of the independent United Italy since the 6th century. This title he held until his death in 1878. The Italians called him Father of the Fatherland. Victor Emmanuel supported the expedition of the Thousand in 1860-1861, led by Giuseppe Garibaldi. It resulted in the rapid fall of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies in the southern Italy. Monument of Nicola Pisano. He was an Italian sculptor whose work is noted for its classical Roman sculptural style. Pisano is sometimes considered to be the founder of the modern sculpture. Pulpit of the Pisa Baptistery considered one of his masterworks. He succeeded in making a synthesis of the French Gothic style with the classical style of ancient Rome. Although Pisa is known worldwide for its Leaning Tower, the city contains more than 20 other historical churches, several medieval palaces, and bridges across the Arno. Much of the city architecture was financed from its history as one of the Italian Maritime Republic. The most believed hypothesis is that the origin of the name Pisa comes from Etruscan and means mouth, as Pisa is at the mouth of the Arno River. Ancient Roman authors refer to Pisa as an old city. Virgil in his Aeneid states that Pisa was already a great center by the time described. The Virginian commentator Servius wrote that the Tueti founded the town 13 centuries before the start of the Common Era. I'm crossing the Arno River on the bridge Ponte di Mezzo. The maritime role of Pisa should have been already prominent, as the ancient authorities ascribed to it the invention of the naval ram. Pisa took advantage of being the only port along the western coast between Genoa, back then a small village, and Ostia. Pisa also served as a base for Roman naval expedition against Ligurians and Gauls. In 180 BC, it became a Roman colony under Roman law as Portus Pisanus. In 89 BC, Portus Pisanus became a municipium. Emperor Augustus fortified the colony into an important port and changed the name to Colonia Iulia. Giuseppe Maria Garibaldi was an Italian general, patriot, revolutionary and republican. He contributed to Italian unification and the creation of the Kingdom of Italy. He is also considered to be one of the Italy's fathers of fatherland. Garibaldi is also known as the hero of two worlds because of his military enterprises in South America and Europe. After participating in an uprising in Piedmont, he was sentenced to death but escaped and sailed to South America, where he spent 14 years in exile, during which he took part in several wars and learned the art of guerrilla warfare. In 1848, Garibaldi returned to Italy and commanded and fought in military campaigns that eventually led to Italian unification. Garibaldi became an international figurehead for national independence and republican ideas, and he is considered by 20th century historiography and popular culture as Italy's greatest national hero. Galileo Galilei was an Italian astronomer, physicist and engineer, sometimes described as a polymath. He was born in the city of Pisa, back then part of the Duchy of Florence. Galileo has been called the father of observational astronomy, modern era classical physics, the scientific method, and the modern science. He studied speed and velocity, gravity and free fall, the principle of relativity, inertia, projective motion, and also worked in applied science and technology, describing the properties of the pendulum and hydrostatic balances. He was one of the earliest Renaissance developers of the thermoscope and the inventor of various military compasses. He used the telescope for scientific observations of celestial objects. With the improved telescope he observed the stars of the Milky Way, the phases of Venus, the 4 largest satellites of Jupiter, Saturn rings, lunar craters, and sunspots. He also built an early microscope. Galileo's championing of the Copernican heliocentrism was met with opposition from within the Catholic Church and from some astronomers. The matter was investigated by the Roman Inquisition in 1615, which concluded that heliocentrism was foolish, absurd, and heretical since it is contradicted biblical creationism. Later, Galileo defended his views in some works and appeared to attack the Pope Urban VIII and thus alienated both from the Pope and the Jesuits who had been supporting Galileo up until this point. He was tried by the Inquisition, found suspect of heresy, and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. I'm approaching the famous Pisa Tower. I enjoy walking these old historical streets very much. They are not perfect, and there is something charming in this imperfection. It feels like the city is pretty old on one side, but also it has a young spirit, and it's very alive. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is a freestanding bell tower of Pisa Cathedral. It is known for its nearly 4-degree lean, the result of an unstable foundation. The tower is one of 3 structures in the Pisa Cathedral Square, Piazza del Duomo, which includes the cathedral and Pisa Baptistery. The height of the tower is 55.86 meters. The tower began to lean during the construction in the 12th century, due to the soft ground which could not properly support the structure weight. With the completion of construction, it got even worse. The construction was completed in 14th century. By 1990, the tilt had reached 5.5 degrees. The structure was stabilized by remedial work between 1993 and 2001, which reduced the tilt to 3.97 degrees. Between 1589 and 1592, Galileo Galilei, who lived in Pisa at that time, is said to have dropped 2 cannonballs of the different masses from the tower to demonstrate that their speed of descent was independent of their mass, in keeping with the law of free fall. During the Second World War, the Allies suspected that the Germans were using the tower as an observation post. Leon Weckstein, a US Army sergeant sent to confirm the presence of German troops in the tower, was impressed with the beauty of the cathedral and the bell tower and thus refrained from ordering an artillery to strike, sparing it from destruction. This place is really unique and it's worth visiting. During the last years of the Western Roman Empire, Pisa did not decline as much as the other cities of Italy, probably due to the complexity of its river system and its consequent ease of defense. In the 7th century, Pisa helped Pope Gregory I by supplying numerous ships in the military expedition against the Byzantines of Ravenna. Pisa began its rise to the role of the main port of Upper Tyrrhenian Sea and became the main trading center between Tuscany and Corsica, Sardinia, and southern coasts of France and Spain. In 1860, Pisa was captured by Vikings led by Bjorn Ironside. In 1930, Pisa became the county center within the Mark of Tassia. In 1003, Pisa was the protagonist of the First Communal War in Italy against Lucca. From the naval point of view, since the 9th century, the emergence of Saracen pirates urged the city to expand its fleet. In the following years, this fleet gave the city opportunity for more expansion. In 828, Pisan ships assaulted the coast of North Africa. In 871, they took part in the defense of Salerno from Saracens. In 970, they gave also strong support to Otto's I's expedition, defeating Byzantine fleet in front of Calabrese coasts. Power of Pisa as a maritime nation began to grow and reached its apex in the 11th century. Then it acquired traditional fame as one of the four main historical maritime republics of Italy. At that time, the city was a very important commercial center and controlled a significant part of Mediterranean merchant fleet and navy. Pisa was in a continuous conflict with some Saracens, who had their bases in Corsica for control of the Mediterranean. In 1017, Sardinian Guidicati were military supported by Pisa in alliance with Genoa to defeat the Saracen king Mughadid, who had settled a logistic base in the north of Sardinia the year before. This victory gave Pisa supremacy in the Tyrrhenian Sea. When the Pisans subsequently ousted the Genoese from Sardinia, a new conflict and rivalry was born between these major marine republics. Between 1030 and 35, Pisa went to defeat several rival towns in Sicily and conquer Carthage in North Africa. The Scuola Normale Superiore in Pisa is a public university institution in Pisa and Florence, currently attended by about 600 undergraduate and postgraduate PhD students. It was founded in 1810 with a decree by Napoleon as a branch of École Normale Supérieure in Paris, with the aim of training the teachers of the empire to educate its citizens. You can also see that the coat of arms contains elements of Medici family coat of arms. In 1063, Pisans took Palermo from the Saracen pirates. The gold treasure taken from the Saracen pirates in Palermo allowed the Pisans to start the building of the cathedral and the other monuments which constitute the famous Piazza del Duomo. In 1060, Pisa engaged in their battle with Genoa. The Pisan victory helped to consolidate its position in the Mediterranean. A Pisan fleet of 120 ships also took part in the First Crusade, and the Pisans were instrumental in the taking of Jerusalem in 1099. On their way to the Holy Land, the ships did not miss the occasion to sack some Byzantine islands. The Pisan Crusaders were led by their Archbishop Theobald, the future Patriarch of Jerusalem. Pisa and other maritime republics took advantage from Crusade and established plenty of trading posts and colonies in the Mediterranean. In all these cities, the Pisans were granted privileges and immunity from taxation, but had to contribute to the defense in case of the attack. In the 12th century, the peasants' quarter in the eastern part of Constantinople had grown to 1,000 people. For some years, Pisa was the most prominent commercial and military ally of the Byzantine Empire, overcoming Venice itself. The new city walls were erected in 1156 by Consul Cocco Griffi. In the following years, Pisa supported the Ghibelline party. This gave Pisa a big advantage. But such a sudden and large increase of power by Pisa could only lead to another war with Genoa. The competition between maritime republics was pretty big, and there were plenty of battles in between them, also different alliances. The great expansion of the Mediterranean and the prominence of the merchant class urged a modification in the city's institutes. The system with consuls was abandoned, and in 1230 the new city rulers were named a Capitano del Popolo, people's chieftain, as civil and military leader. Despite of the reform, the city itself was harassed by rivalry between the two families of della Gherardesca and Visconti. The decline is said to have begun on August 1284, when numerically superior fleet of Pisa was defeated by the brilliant tactics of Genoa's fleet in the dramatic naval battle of Meloria. This defeat ended the maritime power of Pisa, and the town never fully recovered. In 1290, the Genoese destroyed forever the port of Pisano, Pisa's port, and covered the land with salt. Pisa tried to rebuild its power in the course of the 14th century, and even managed to defeat Florence in the Battle of Montecatini, 1315. However, eventually, after a long siege, Pisa was occupied by Florentines in 1405. Florentines corrupted the people's chieftain Giovanni Gambacorta, who at night opened the city gate of San Marco. Pisa was never conquered by the army. In the 15th century, access to the sea became more difficult as the port was silting up and was cut off from the sea. In 1494, Pisa reclaimed its independence as the Second Pisan Republic. The new freedom did not last long. Florentines spent 15 years of battles, but they failed to conquer the city. However, the resources of Pisa were getting low, and at the end the city was sold to the Visconti family from Milan, and eventually to Florence again. Livorno took over the role of main port of Tuscany. Pisa acquired a mainly cultural role, spurred by the presence of the University of Pisa, created in 1343, and later reinforced by Scuola Normale Superiore di Pisa and San Anna School of Advanced Studies. Besides its educational institution, it has become a light industrial center and a railway hub. It suffered repeated destruction during the Second World War. Since the early 1950s, the US Army has maintained Camp Darby just outside of Pisa, which is used by many US militaries as a base for vacation in the area. The city truly has enormous and dramatic history. And still it looks amazingly charming, with plenty of narrow streets, old buildings and monuments. It definitely worth visiting, and not only because of the Pisa Tower. I also had the feeling that it is more a student city than a touristic one. Maybe because it's end of November. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time.